So today we're going to take a look back, way back to 2009, and decode a pretty influential piece of internet culture, a dating guide for men called A Modern Man's Guide to Seduction. We're just going to explore its core ideas, its philosophy, and the actual techniques it was teaching. Let's get into it.
Right from the jump, the guide opens with this quote from the movie Hitch, and it really gets to the heart of the problem it's trying to solve, this feeling of confusion. The idea that the simple, direct approach, just walking up and saying, "I like you," just doesn't seem to cut it anymore, and the guys need a better plan.
And that's the book's whole premise, really. It says that the rules most men learn about dating are just, well, they're wrong. The author even uses an analogy. It's like you're trying to play a game of tennis, but someone handed you a basketball. You're using completely the wrong equipment for the game you're in.
So how do you fix this? Well, the guide introduces its first really big concept, the seduction matrix. The idea here is that there's this hidden reality, a completely different set of unspoken rules that actually govern how men and women interact. And according to the author, most of us are totally clueless about it.
You know, this whole framework immediately brings up a big question. If this hidden matrix is real, what about that classic piece of advice we've all heard a million times? Just be yourself. Why does that seem to fail so often?
Well, the guide argues that for a lot of guys, their default way of being themselves translates into these specific behaviors. You know, giving way too much without asking for anything back, throwing out compliments left and right, and basically chasing after a girl before she's shown any real interest. From the author's point of view, these actions don't scream confidence, they scream neediness. And this is where we get to the absolute core of the argument. The guide's central theory is that the rules society teaches us for being polite and nice are in direct conflict with our deeper, subconscious attraction triggers, the stuff that's supposedly wired into us from an evolutionary standpoint. And it's this clash, the book says, that's causing all the confusion in modern dating.
Which leads us straight into the guide's next major point. Its attempt to completely bust what it calls the nice guy myth.
And right here, you can see that core conflict in action. The book draws a sharp contrast between what it claims women say they want and what it claims they subconsciously respond to. So the argument isn't that being respectful is bad, but that things like status, dominance, and confidence are what actually flip that initial switch of attraction. Now, let's be super clear here. The guide isn't arguing that you shouldn't be a nice or respectful person. Not at all. Its position is that those qualities are absolutely vital for a real relationship, but they only really come into play after attraction is already there. In this view, they aren't the things that create the spark in the first place.
Okay, so if just being nice isn't the key, then what is? The guide proposes its own answer, a framework it calls the game of value, and this is presented as the true underlying currency of attraction.
According to the guide, value and status aren't about having a lot of money or being arrogant. It's defined as a whole collection of traits that subconsciously send a signal about a man's competence. You know, his ability to survive, to protect, to provide. The theory is that evolution has wired women to be attracted to those signals. The guide even breaks value down into 5 specific types. First up is evolutionary value, stuff like confidence and ambition. Then you've got social value, which is all about being socially smart and well-liked. Third is emotional value, like being funny and making her feel good. Fourth is sexual value, which basically means being seen as desirable by other women. And last, there's protector and provider value, which signals safety and security. So then the guide gets really practical. It lays out behaviors that communicate low value versus those that communicate high value. For instance, putting yourself down or always needing her approval, that's framed as low value. On the flip side, using confident humor, telling good stories, and even making her work for your approval, those are presented as high-value moves. Okay, so that's all the theory, right? The whole idea of value. But how does it actually work when you're talking to someone? Well, the guide lays out a very specific playbook for what it calls a seductive interaction.
And the goal here is pretty explicit. This isn't just about having a nice chat. The whole point is to deliberately shift the dynamic from just a friendly, platonic conversation to something that creates a bit of sexual tension and is open to escalation.
And to make that shift happen, the book outlines 5 key techniques. First, disqualify yourself. Playfully hint that you're not interested to kind of throw her off balance. Second, flirt and tease. Create that fun, challenging vibe. Third, push and pull. Give her attention, then take it away to create some mystery. Fourth, qualify her. Flip the script so she feels like she has to impress you. And finally, kino, which is the guide's term for gradually introducing physical touch.
This quote right here perfectly sums up the entire psychological goal of this playbook. The ultimate aim is to create a dynamic where she feels like she's the one doing the pursuing, like she's the one winning him over.
But hey, things don't always go smoothly, right? What happens when there's resistance? The guide's final section covers this, and it has a pretty colorful name for it, the Knobstacle course.
Now, this framework presents resistance in a very specific way. It's not seen as an automatic hard no. Instead, it's framed as a natural part of the game, often an unconscious test of a man's confidence, his persistence, and his overall value. And so the guide offers a set of rules for navigating this course. A man should always take responsibility so she feels like the whole thing just happened. It advises being persistent but never forceful or reactive, using touch to test comfort, not to apply pressure. The advice is also to not take these so-called tests personally and to get past that player vibe by building genuine attraction first. The guide wraps this section up with what it holds up as an ethical guideline, quoting another figure from that scene, Ross Jeffries. Always leave a woman better than when you found her. The stated principle is that every interaction, no matter what, should be a positive one for her.
So, to bring it all home, this 2009 guide was basically proposing a whole new framework for attraction. It completely rejects conventional dating advice and reframes seduction as a game governed by the rules of evolutionary psychology, where the main goal is to show that you have high value and status.
Which really leaves us with the big, provocative question at the very heart of this guide's philosophy. Is attraction just a natural, spontaneous thing that happens? Or is it, as this book argues, a game with a specific set of rules that can and maybe even should be learned?